Dear Christian friends, Victoria was Queen of England for more than 60 years during the 19th century. Now, according to Amazon Prime and Masterpiece Theater, Queen Victoria once got lost while riding a horse through her northern kingdom of Scotland. Having become separated from her riding party, Queen Victoria and her German husband, Prince Albert, happened upon a small cottage isolated on a northern Scottish moor. A moor is what you call a big giant field in Britain. So Prince Albert gets down off of his horse, walks up to this cottage and knocks on the door. And an older couple takes them in, not knowing that they had just welcomed into their home the most powerful woman in the world at that time. And that evening, Queen Victoria and her husband do things they've never done before. They try things they have never tried before. They eat cooked fish with their fingers. Can you imagine a queen eating with her fingers? Queen Victoria that evening learns how to darn a sock. Darning a sock means that's how you fix the holes in socks. It's an interesting little story. And the truth is that, people in different situations, we know how to do different things based on our experiences. Unfortunately, like most things you'll watch on TV, it never actually happened. Oh, sure. Queen Victoria loved visiting Scotland, and she loved getting away from it all. But think about it for a moment, really. How do you lose a queen? Right? No matter. The point that the episode makes is true. Our different situations and life experiences means we understand different things and we know how to do different things. There are things that kings and queens know and can do that us non-kings and non-queens don't know and can't do. A few weeks ago, I read a great quote attributed to Mark Twain. It goes like this: "Anyone who has grabbed a bull by the tail knows 5 or 6 more things than someone who has not." Unfortunately, like many quotes you'll find on the internet, Mark Twain never actually said this. Now, Mark Twain did talk or write about grabbing a bull by a tail, but he was actually making a slightly different point. No matter, this fake Mark Twain quote and the never really happened Queen Victoria episode stress a truth. Our experiences mean that we know different things and can do different things. And we can all think of examples of that in our own lives. Now, this morning we'll be celebrating Christ as King. Jesus is the King. And as the King, He knew things that kings know and understand. And even though His kingship was quite different than most kings. And this morning we're going to especially focus on Jesus' coronation when He was crowned. And that was a very unique, one-of-a-kind event. The event of Jesus' crowning reminds us that He had an experience that probably some can relate with. Hopefully most of us can't. You see, Jesus knew what it's like to be surrounded by a group of armed men who are not your friends. Now, if you've ever had that experience of being surrounded by a group of armed men who are not your friends, you will know and understand some things that those who haven't had that experience won't fully maybe understand. One of those things that you know and understand is you know what it's like to not be in control. is if you are surrounded by a group of armed men who are not your friends, it's very clear to you that you are not in control. I think most of us Americans typically live as if we are in control. We like to think we are in control. We like the feeling of being in control. We're happy when a plan goes smoothly. You know, it's 6 a.m. and so I'm going to do my 7-minute workout. And then after my 7-minute workout, I get a drink of water. Then I fill up my coffee. I have my devotion at 6:30. I finish my devotion and say my prayers, and I go up and take a shower and finish getting breakfast ready for the kids. At 7:10, I'm out the door. By 8 o'clock, this is going to happen, and then at 8:10, the next thing's going to happen, and so goes in American life. Your school is going to have a class picnic, and so the teacher has created a website where everybody can go on and fill out what they're going to bring to the class picnic, because you want everything to go smoothly and you want to make sure all the bases are covered. Or consider for a moment the apps on your phone. How many of those apps aren't dedicated to help making your life run just a little bit smoother? I know most of the ones on my phone are, right? This morning I wanted to talk to a few people in Latin America. I use one app. I wanted to get up here to the church. I use another app. You want to make sure to get certain things after the church. You have another app, right? It's all there to help make sure your life runs smoothly and you feel as if you're in control. And I think those of us Americans, especially who are of Northern European descent, we really like when a plan runs smoothly. We like feeling in control. It feels good. Except there's just one thing. You're not really in control. Just think for a moment of all the different unexpected things that could happen to you today. I mean, truly, stop for a moment and think of all the different unexpected things that could happen today. I know when I think about that, I shudder. It can make you feel nervous, uncomfortable perhaps, maybe even a little bit fearful. There's another feeling that we can get when things don't run according to our plan. We can feel frustrated and impatient. You have 22 minutes to get to work in the morning, and it all goes smoothly until you're in that left-hand turn lane where traffic is just taking longer than normal. And so, what happens? Frustration and impatience, right? Maybe a few thoughts enter your head, go down into your heart, maybe a word comes off your lips. You just got home and you have to tackle that to-do that has been hanging over you. You have 25 minutes to get it done before the next activity starts, but when you walk into your house, your kid comes up to you wanting to do that kid thing that he loves doing. You think, not now. Right? So a quick word and you're back to trying to follow through on the plan. Sometimes the thing that happens in your life can be something very serious. Something that's going on at home, or maybe an illness, or maybe it's something hard. Something going on in school right now, a class that you just can't stand. You're working hard, you're trying to do your best, but you just don't get it. When you're going through something unexpected that is hard, everything seems to slow down. Time feels like it's crawling. That event or that thing that's happening just gets to feel like it's dragging on. We're impatient because we're not in control, and we would like it done now. Now, whether it's a small daily bother or a huge life-altering moment, unexpected and unasked for challenges and delays increase stress and can lead to frustrated impatience directed at other people and sometimes at God. That's when it's good for us to remember that Jesus was crowned king. Not only was he a king unlike any other, his coronation was truly a unique event. Remember how a person, when they're surrounded by armed men who are not their friends, will understand certain things, and one of those things is what it's like not to be in control? Well, here's the thing. That wasn't how it worked for Jesus. The Apostle Matthew describes Jesus' coronation. Look how he starts off. He says, "Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him." Let's unpack that just for a little bit. There it says that they took Jesus into the praetorium. Now, what's the praetorium? The praetorium, in some ways, is kind of like, what is it called here? Mar-a-Lago, where President Trump comes when he comes to town, right? That's the place where he stays. So when Governor Pilate came to town, came to Jerusalem, he would stay at the praetorium. Now the difference is, I think President Trump prefers to be here, and Governor Pilate definitely preferred to be in the governor's palace. The governor's palace for Judea was a gorgeous oceanfront view mansion in the town of Caesarea, this modern town right on the coast, and that's where he wanted to be. But for special events and certain political obligations, like the Passover, he needed to go up to Jerusalem, and so he would stay in the praetorium and he would not come alone. Matthew actually uses a Roman military term here when he says the whole company of soldiers gathered around Jesus. That military term Matthew used is called a cohort. So Matthew is saying that a whole cohort of soldiers was there. Now a cohort is at least, the minimum number you can have to make a cohort of soldiers in the Roman army was 360 soldiers. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't 20 gangsters armed with bats and knives who are surrounding you in a park or a dark alleyway. This isn't 6 corrupt police officers who pull you over and want to steal your money. This is hundreds of men from one of the strongest and most effective fighting forces in the history of humans that have taken Jesus and are surrounding him. Now this is where Jesus' coronation really starts to show itself as one of a kind. So hundreds of soldiers are surrounding Jesus, but Jesus was in absolute control of the situation. He had demonstrated that control just a few hours beforehand, and some of those soldiers were most certainly there when it happened. Remember, it was only a few hours before this that Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. And in order to arrest Jesus, Judas came, and he knew that Jesus liked to go to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he brought a contingent from this cohort of soldiers with him and some other leaders in the church and some of Jesus' enemies. And it was Judas's job to be the official eyewitness and say, "That's the man." And so when Judas points out to them that that's the man, Jesus says, "Yes, I am he." And at that moment that Jesus says that he is the one they are looking for, the Apostle John writes and tells us that all the people with Judas, those soldiers and everyone else, stepped back and fell to the ground. Jesus was in control. And it was Peter who then thought, this is the time for fighting, and so he draws his sword. And what does Jesus tell Peter? He says, "Peter, do you think that I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels?" Now, let's put that into perspective. Here, they have a cohort of soldiers. A cohort, you need 10 cohorts to make a legion. Historians believe that at the time when this happened, Pilate had at his disposal 5 cohorts of soldiers, or a half legion of soldiers that controlled the province of Judah. So Jesus is telling Peter and the people there, you know, at just a moment's notice, I can call on more than 20 times the armed fighting force here in Judea, and they won't be Roman military. They'll be armed spiritual warriors, angels. Huh. Yeah. Jesus was in absolute control. And that's what makes this coronation so stunning. Because consider what happens next. And as you think through this, remember that when you don't like something you're going through, time slows down. All right? Now let's consider what happens to Jesus. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. They probably tracked down that scarlet robe from Herod. When Jesus had come back from Herod, the soldiers from King Herod had wanted to mock and make fun of Jesus, and so they found a fancy robe and put that on Jesus. So it's very possible that that's where these hundreds of soldiers got a scarlet robe. They stripped Jesus and put the robe on him. Then it says, and then they twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. Now, to help us consider this, I brought a crown of thorns. When I look at this crown of thorns, there are different things that might strike you as you consider a crown of thorns, an actual crown. But what I'll tell you is this. So when I was thinking I wanted to have a crown of thorns, I thought, man, do I really want to take the time to make one? I mean, now the good news is in that Judah, there's a lot of thorn bushes. So it wouldn't be that far to find them. But even if you have some ready access to thorn bushes, this is a definite craft project going on here. And even if you have some very calloused soldier hands, this is not exactly the easiest thing to do. I don't think they had one just sitting there. Right? So somebody had to take the time to make it. I know I didn't want to take the time to make this. I just ordered mine off of Amazon. The point here is this wasn't just a quick thing that happened, right? So they take the crown of thorns, they put it together, they set it on his head. Then they find a staff and they put that in his right hand. And then all those hundreds of soldiers participate in a group bullying event, right? They kneel down in front of him and they mock him. Hail, the King of the Jews. And after that, it becomes a spitting. And then they take that rod that they had given him, they take it out of his hand, and they grab it, and they hit him on the head with it again and again. Then they take that scarlet robe off him, stripping him once more, and put on his regular clothes and lead him away to be crucified. I think it's a very hard scene to envision. We might be tempted when we're thinking about this to think, poor Jesus, they were so cruel. And cruelty really doesn't do justice to what he experienced. But remember, he could have made it stop at any moment. I think one of the temptations when we look at Jesus' crowning of thorn, the coronation, is one of the temptations is for us to pass over it kind of quickly. We knew it hurt, we knew it was bad, but we want to pass over and get on to the important part where he died on the cross. Remember, this wasn't just a 5-minute little addition tacked on to his suffering that day. This was a drawn-out event. And what amazes me is how Jesus handled it. Quietly, patiently, without a gripe, without a pithy comeback. He didn't do anything behind the scenes to try to speed it up. He handled his crowning with a kingly patience. It kind of puts our impatience and frustration into perspective, doesn't it? When it's hard, when you're going through something hard and it feels like it's taking forever, remember Jesus' kingly patience? When it's something unexpected, an unexpected interruption that changes our plan, remember Jesus' kingly patience? Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but I'll remember that and I'll feel really guilty. I mean, I can't do what he did. I can't be like Jesus. I don't measure up. Here is the good news. Jesus doesn't ask you to do what he did. Jesus isn't asking you to show a kingly patience. He's a king. Kings know things and can do things that us non-kings can't know and can't do. But what Jesus does want is he wants you to receive something that only he can give. He wants you to receive his incredible peace. A peace that surpasses our ability to understand it. When you think of the Bible, realize that it is the greatest story ever told. Now, it's a true story. And like all good stories, it has a hero. The hero is Jesus. But in order for there to be a hero, there needs to be a crisis, a situation that appears hopeless. And that hopeless situation is our ability to measure up to God's perfect standard. Jesus is love. Jesus is also holy. And the Gospels are filled with examples of Jesus teaching us how to live according to God's perfect rule. He tells you, don't worry. Think about the flowers and the birds. Here in South Florida, we can see flowers and birds every day, right? Think about those. I take care of those things. I'm going to take care of you too. So don't worry. And yet, we do. And that's wrong. That's sin. And that's just one example. No matter how hard we try, we can't shed ourselves of daily disobedience. Our situation appears hopeless. And that's when it's important for us to look back and see Jesus receiving his crown. But when you do, don't focus on Jesus' suffering. See Jesus filled with kingly patience. You know how you're patient? What's behind patience? It's love. Love. I mean, think about this. Think of what a loving mom does for her kids. Right? A lot of patience. Or what a loving father does for his family. The sacrifices they're happily and willingly able to make because they love. I have a almost 2-year-old in our family right now, and I'm blessed with a wife who's an amazing mom. And many times I look and I see the almost 2-year-old acting the way almost 2-year-olds will act. And there she is on the floor having one of those almost 2-year-old moments. And mom, patient, right? Why? Because she loves that almost 2-year-old. You are loved by Jesus. That's why he was so patient. You are truly loved. And we know we are loved, but I think sometimes we can get caught up with all the other things going on in our lives that we kind of forget for a moment. But when you stop and you remember that you are truly loved by God, then something happens. Something bubbles up inside of you. That's joy. Now, we have been filled with joy ever since we were baptized, because we were baptized into Christ. But again, in our life and with all the different things going on in our lives, sometimes you can forget about these things that you have. But then you remember, I am loved, and that brings joy. And when you take love and add joy, it leads to peace. Peace. And love, joy, and peace bring patience. Take a look at the Apostle Paul wrote about this in his letter to the Galatians. He said that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience. And then all these other blessings of the Spirit: kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. God does not ask you to show kingly patience. We'll never be able to do that because Jesus is king. We're not. And there are things that kings know and understand that can do that us non-kings can't know, can't understand, and won't be able to do. But Jesus' act of love during his crowning is just one of the many things that he does each and every day because he loves you. His kingly patience as the hero brings you joy and peace, which leads to patience and a whole host of other blessings in our lives. Those are fruits of the Spirit. So let it be. Amen.